Erica. Welcome back to Maniacal Reader. I know this video is a little late, but today I'm doing my November wrap-up. I read 11 or 12 books in the month of November, and I have lots to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. The first book I read in November was Lovers Like Us by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is the sequel to Damaged Like Us, and it's the second book in the Like Us series. The Like Us series is the spin-off series of the Addicted series. And this second book continues the romance of Maximoff Hale and his romance with his bodyguard named Pharaoh King. Something devastating happened at the end of the first book. This second book deals with the consequences of that event that happened, that completely rocked Maximoff's world. In order to compensate for that disastrous event at the end of the first book, Maximoff Hale, some of his family members, and bodyguards decide to go on a tour for meet and greets and different activities in certain cities around the country. It was interesting to see Maximoff and Pharaoh's relationship develop more in the second book, and I really liked the development of that relationship, but that's not the focus of this book. In the second book, we get to know some of the bodyguards a lot more and the different dynamics between the bodyguards, as well as Maximoff's relationship with Charlie. I understood their dynamic right off the bat from the prologue, and I kind of guessed how their relationship would be explored in the book, but I did still like seeing it. On top of all of this, someone is stalking Maximoff, so Pharaoh feels it's his responsibility, especially now, to protect Maximoff more. The fact that someone is stalking Maximoff puts a strain on their relationship, and this plotline allows them to explore their relationship more as well. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I loved the romance primarily, but I loved all of the side things that were going on with the characters in their lives. Krista and Becca Ritchie are like my top favorite authors, so I definitely really loved this book, and I'm highly anticipating Alphas Like Us, the third book in the series, coming sometime in 2018. The next book I read was Forget Tomorrow by Pintip Dunn. This is the first book in a YA sci-fi trilogy. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I didn't really like it that much at all. In this world, people get a vision from their future self determining their destiny and the rest of their lives. And this whole book explores what would you do if your future was predetermined. Even if the future is predetermined, is there something you can do to change your future? That's the whole idea behind this book. This book follows a girl named Callie, who on her 17th birthday receives her future vision, and she just happens to be a criminal in the future that kills her younger sister. Throughout this book, Callie is trying to find out how to change her fate and why she would choose to kill her younger sister. Even though the premise of this book did sound interesting, I ended up only giving this book 2 stars. The world in this book was interesting, and I liked the questions that the book brought up, but I didn't feel myself getting attached to any of the characters, and I felt that some of the story was too character-focused, and I didn't really care about any of the side character stories. I also didn't really believe in the romance between Callie and Logan in this book. It felt too instant love to me, so I didn't really believe that Callie and Logan had a genuine connection. I thought that at some points during this book, Callie was annoying and she couldn't really make up her mind about things. That annoyed me about her character. Also, I felt that Logan was a sweet character, but he wasn't really fleshed out either. Logan was just letting his brother control his life and his decisions, because he feels guilty for something, so he just lets his brother have all the say when he really wants to be with Callie, but his brother thinks differently. I didn't really like this about his character, and that he doesn't really stand up for himself or the decisions that he wants to make. The conclusion to his book was shocking, and it did provide shock value, but I wasn't invested in the story or characters enough to want to continue this series. The next book I read in November was We Were Liars by Lockhart. This is a YA contemporary standalone. This is a book that I ended up reading and borrowing from the library. I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I did really like the mystery element to this book and really finding out what was going on with the characters. I loved all the characters in this book, and I didn't see the ending coming at all, so that was definitely a surprise. I loved getting to know all of the characters though, and I liked getting to know more about them as the story was revealed. Even though I did love the characters and the mysteriousness of the plot, I didn't really like the writing style in this book. I found it to be a bit jarring, and I didn't really like the metaphors that the author played with in describing some of the characters' emotions. I would definitely reread this book just because I loved the story, even though at some times I found the writing style to be a bit jarring. The next book I read in November was Blitz by Anastasiu. This is the first book in a YA sci-fi trilogy, and it follows this girl named Zoe who lives in the community. And in the community, chips are implanted into people in order to have them avoid destructive emotions. But all of a sudden, Zoe begins to glitch and starts to feel emotions. When this happens, Zoe is close to being caught by community officials until someone helps her escape. Now Zoe is on the run from the community and hopes to change things in her world. Someone helps Zoe escape. This character happens to be the main love interest in the book. I did like the characters in this book. The world was definitely interesting, and the plot was very action-packed, so I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did like the romance of this book, but I seem to be forgetting his name at the moment. I felt that the romance was a little insta-love in the beginning, but the relationship did grow on me. The next book I read was Override by Anastasiu. This is the sequel to Glitch. I think I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really liked this book, and this book was definitely a great sequel. There was non-stop action from the beginning, and I couldn't put this book down. This was a book that I borrowed from the library, but I do plan on rereading this trilogy, so my own copies of the second and third book should be coming soon. I also liked things that happened with Max in this second book, which is Zoe's best friend, but he becomes an antagonist in the series. He makes some interesting decisions in this book. I like seeing his reasoning behind his decisions and getting to know more about Zoe and Max's friendship dynamics in this book. The next book I read was Shutdown. This is the third book in the trilogy. I ended up giving this book, I believe, 4.5 stars or 5 out of 5 stars. It was really an awesome conclusion to the trilogy, and I really enjoyed it. The next book I read was We Own Tonight by Corinne. This is a contemporary romance standalone. This book is about this girl who falls in love with her celebrity crush. There is a 30-year-old police officer who's dealing with a lot in her life. She has a lot of responsibility. Her parents died when she was 21, and this left her to care for her younger sister, Stephanie. Unfortunately, Heather's sister, Stephanie, was diagnosed with Huntington's disease when she was 19 years old in her second year of college, so for the past 7 years, Heather has been looking after her sister and visiting her in her assisted living facility. Because of that, Heather has no room for relationships and no life of her own. So when Heather's 4 friends force her to go out one night to a concert, they want her to have a good time and just forget the stress of her life for a while. This concert leads her to meet Eli, who is one of the singers in the band. She has a one-night stand with Eli after the concert. After they have the one-night stand, she kind of hightails it out of there, not believing she can have a real relationship with a celebrity. But Eli has other things in mind, and he doesn't want to let her go. I really enjoyed the slow development of Heather and Eli's relationship. I thought it was sweet. I also enjoyed seeing the dynamic between Heather and her sister in this book. I didn't see the plot twist in this book coming. That came out of left field and left me completely surprised. I understood where both Heather and Eli were coming from in the situation, but I tended to be more understanding of Eli and the situation. Aside from the main romance, I also enjoyed the friendship dynamics between Heather and all of her friends, especially her best friend Nicole. The conclusion to this book was awesome, and everything I could have wanted for Heather. I only gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, because although this book was a standalone, it left me wanting more, especially about Heather's friend Nicole. I was intrigued by her in this book, and I wanted to know more about her story. The next book I read was Blue Bloods by Melissa De La Cruz. This is the first book in a YA paranormal fantasy series. I ended up giving this book 3 out of 5 stars. I talk more about this book in my TBR Takedown vlog and wrap-up, so if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts, I'll put a card in this video so you guys can check out that video. The next book I read was The Baller by Vi Keeland. This is a contemporary romance standalone, and it's a football romance. This is also one of the books that I read for TBR Takedown, so if you'd like to hear more of my thoughts, again, you can check out that video. I ended up giving this book 2 stars. I didn't really like it at all. Next up, I have Just Listen by Dessen. This is the last book that I read for TBR Takedown, and I ended up giving this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I'll definitely be checking out more Dessen books in the future. Next up, I read The Perfect Plate by Jaci Burton. This is the first book in a contemporary romance sports series. This is a book that I read on my Kindle, but it's also a book that I read with a friend on Goodreads. This book follows the romance of Mick Riley, who's a pro football player, and his romance with a single mom named Tara. Tara is a single mom of a teenage son, and she doesn't really think her life has room for relationships, but she's an event planner. She meets Mick at an event that she planned for his football team. I liked the relationship between Mick and Tara, but I found that their relationship was a little too sexual for me and not enough romance. However, the plot was awesome, and I also liked the different family dynamics in this book. Tara's relationship with her son, but also Mick's relationship with his family, and particularly his relationship with his brother Gavin. All the different family dynamics did make up for the romance, which was a little lacking. I did suspect the plot twist because it was foreshadowed a little bit, so I did see it coming. Even though I did see the plot twist coming, I didn't expect the change in Mick's relationship with Tara. That came as a surprise, and I wasn't expecting that. But I could understand Tara's reservations in her relationship with Mick. I ended up giving this book 3.5 stars. I definitely plan on continuing the series at some point in the future. I did enjoy this book, even though the relationship was slightly lacking in my opinion. And the last book I read this month was Pulse by Carman. This is the first book in a YA sci-fi trilogy. I ended up giving this book 2 out of 5 stars. I didn't really like it that much at all. The plot moved too slowly, and it's not until you get to page 200 or so that you actually find out what's going on in this book. In this world, people have a pulse that allow them to move objects with their mind, but some people have a second pulse, which makes them stronger than people who just have one pulse. I didn't really find myself getting attached to any of the characters in this book, and I didn't believe the romance at all between the main character, Faith Daniels, and her classmate, Dylan Gilmore. These two characters were just thrown together, and there was absolutely no relationship development. As the plot went on, I found that the ending was a little anticlimactic, so I don't plan on continuing this series. Those are all of the books that I read in November. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in my next one.